Hello and welcome to Politics here on France 24. After 6 months of socialist rule here in France, it is now time to try to figure out which left is in power. Is President François Hollande a traditional leftist, or is he a social democrat? Is his government thinking first and foremost about social justice, or listening to the wishes of the financial market? This is not just a theoretical debate, but it is crucial to understand where France is heading in the midst of a prolonged economic crisis. To discuss the issue of the identity of the left here in France, we have two socialist MPs, Jérôme Guedj, as well as Philippe Cordery, and from the outside looking in, I could say a member of the left front, Raquel Garrido, the left front being a coalition that comprises the Communist Party, which has refused to join the government and actually voted against the government. We'll get back to that in a second. This debate has been before our very eyes in the last few days, and it's still unfolding with the vivid controversy over the fate of a steel plant in northeastern France in Florange. Faced with the prospect that the owner, Indian businessman Lakshmi Mittal, would shut its last blast furnaces, the government has issued the threat of nationalization before backing down. It reached an agreement with Mittal that will save some 600 jobs, but the unions say the deal is a betrayal.
He heard us, but he didn't listen to us. We simply cannot accept this. We cannot.
I told him that we feel we've been betrayed. That's what I told him. He said he could understand why we feel that way, but it's not the case. But my doubts are still the same.
So this is the reaction of the trade unions after meeting with the Prime Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault. This agreement has also created tensions within the government, especially between the Prime Minister, Jean-Marc Ayrault, and the Minister for Industrial Renewal, Arnaud Montebourg, who publicly supported temporary nationalization, but was publicly rebutted by the Prime Minister. Since then, Jean-Marc Ayrault has tried to mend fences with his ministers. Let's take a listen to Jean-Marc Ayrault speaking of Arnaud Montebourg.
We need everyone on the team, and a team isn't necessarily made up of people who all have the same temperament, the same style, the same approach. What's important is that the team stick together when decisions are made. That's how a government works.
Jérôme Guedj, through all this debate, there is a more fundamental one, in trying to figure out, where François Hollande is heading.
François Hollande is at the head of the French Republic. He has been elected on the basis of a left program. It was quite hard to defeat Nicolas Sarkozy, and he has raised great hopes in the country. And I'm convinced that we have to fulfill this commitment and to speak to all the components of the society. On the first hand, he has decided to make what we call a trust message to the enterprises, to firms. I would like at the same time that
to the markets
also, even if he said during his political campaign that he had to deal against the finance, and I would like him to fulfill this commitment. That's why I would like at the same time to have strong messages through the union trade, the labor market, and I would have liked that on the Florange cases, the solution proposed by Arnaud Montebourg, I would have liked this solution of nationalization.
Can I say you're a little bit disappointed because you see François Hollande as going too much towards the center?
I'm not disappointed because we knew François Hollande. He's at the center position in the left landscape. But I know that he is capable to give contradictory signs. That's why I was very happy when I heard that the nationalization came back in the socialist vocabulary after 20 years of. During 20 years, we didn't talk about that. So I think, especially after the very recent decision of Mittal, probably not to fulfill his commitment. The agreement was to invest in a European project called ULCOS, and it seemed that he's not going to respect this agreement. So I I would like François Hollande and Arnaud Montebourg to say, okay, in this case, we have to nationalize.
Okay, Philippe Cordray, do you agree that François Hollande has been giving too much hope, too much messages to companies, and there's also a competitiveness pact that was put in place, and some people are saying he's just doing free market policies?
Well, first of all, I want to underline and understand what the workers and the trade unionists have said.
Betrayal. Strong words.
Yes,
they said betrayal.
But first of all, they want to keep their jobs. And this is what the government is trying to do. Because as I said, the government and the socialist government has been elected on a clear program to relaunch our economy and to make sure that we keep the unemployment rates down. And this is what is in the mind of all the ministers, the government, and François Hollande. And there are lots of jobs in the industry, and relaunching the industry is a priority. And as Jérôme has just said, political will has regained at the moment in the vocabulary. And I think this is what I want to underline first. I mean, there's different options, there's different ways of doing it. And Arnaud Montebourg, I think, was right to propose the solution of the temporary nationalization. But then, there were other options on the table. I mean, at the end of the day, there was a deal between the government and Mittal, which is also a respectable one.
Right,
so let's try now and see if we can implement this.
Just for our viewers, Arnaud Montebourg was on the verge of resigning after he was publicly rebutted and maybe humiliated by the Prime Minister, who said nationalization is a bad option, and what you're saying is not the truth. I mean, this is a serious crisis.
No, it's not a serious crisis.
Why not?
I mean, what he put on the table helped also to find an agreement between the government and Mittal. Yes. It's also a question of deterrence. It's also a question of threat, which enabled a better deal at the end, which is
Do you agree, Raquel Garrido, that it was a fine-tuned strategy to get a result?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, it isn't, because one of the 3 points in the agreement was that Mittal would maintain the ultra-low carbon dioxide steelmaking program, the European Union's program, and today it decided that he wasn't going to implement that program at all. So the last night's agreement already has fallen. So we have to come back to a more pragmatic solution, which is nationalization. Nationalization, expropriation, if you will, is seen as something very dogmatic, but it isn't. It's just plain pragmatism. If the markets, if the private industry, the private sector is not fulfilling, well, then why not the state? The steel making is something strategic for France. We need, we count on steel. France needs tons and tons and tons of steel every year. Europe needs around 2 million tons of steel a year. And if that steel is not made in Europe or in France, then you have other environmental issues, because you have to bring it from elsewhere, besides the jobs issue, which is obviously very important. So we need a government that and gives the answers. And the problem is that if you look at what's happening in the rest of the European countries where the Social Democrats are at government, they are not giving the answers. And so what's at stake is to the concrete problems of but
they're giving
jobs,
answers to the markets. Or the IMF, or the European Commission.
Even the IMF is today not as happy as it used to be on austerity plans. I mean, everyone is seeing that austerity plans is bringing Europe nowhere. So there's a problem there with the Social Democrats. There's a problem. So, but does that mean that the whole of the left dies in Europe? I don't think so. I think that what Jérôme Guedj says, what Philippe says on the positive side of nationalization, I think, and with what we say, the Front de Gauche and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, shows that there's another left. There's a left that can actually govern.
Speaking of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the leader of your party, we're just going to see one of the numerous declarations he made in recent days. He's asking the question, is François Hollande taking into consideration the fact that he was not solely elected by socialists? Why is he taking into account only the most right-wing and most archaic elements of his majority? François Hollande is as blind as King Louis XVI. He's unable, to imagine a different world. Not exactly very nice words coming from the left.
It's Jean-Luc style, so...
But it's also substance. It's not only style.
No, honestly, I'm convinced that we have to take into account that there is great hopes among the people in France, and we have to deal with that.
They're already very disappointed, according to all the polls.
They are probably disappointed because the crisis is very strong. So we have to show that the state, that the public authorities are willing to do things. We have to show that we are capable to change and to prevent from being too realistic. You know, the so-called realism. There is a left realism in this country, and for instance, temporary nationalization, or to create a law for the punishment of those companies like Sanofi, for instance, in France, that are about to fire people, and at the same time they have huge profit. We have to show that the state can do things. 10 years ago, Prime Minister Lionel Jospin used to say the state can't do everything.
Socialist Prime Minister.
Socialist Prime Minister, and we have to say and to act completely differently.
Right, but it seems that that's not exactly what François Hollande is doing all the time. And some people within the party, you might not want to say it here out loud, but it's heard in the corridors of Parliament and other, are saying François Hollande is not doing exactly what Jérôme Guedj has been advocating.
But don't you think that creating a public investment bank to guarantee loans for small and medium enterprises to be able to relaunch the economy is having the state sort of helping the economy? Don't you think that creating youth jobs for young people is also an intervention from the state? I mean, we do have today, and I want to see the program of the government as a whole, an interventory policy from the state, because we need this to relaunch the economy. And we have to look at it globally. I mean, we come from a disastrous economic and financial situation, which the right has left us in the past 10 years, with unemployment rates shooting up, with poverty increasing, with inequalities rising. And we have to face this situation now in the framework that we have, because we do have a conservative majority in the European Union, which we should not forget. So we don't have all the powers. We also have that in the framework of the right wing in Europe. And in that framework, I think the government is really implementing a policy which is changing completely our economy. The budget that we adopted, one last thing, we're sort of taxing capital. We're taxing capital the same way as we're taxing labour. It's the first time that a government in France is actually taxing capital in the same way. And that's a left-wing budget, and I'd like all the left to be able to support this budget.
It's not a left-wing budget, obviously, because it aims at equilibrium, and so it forbids the massive investments that are needed today in France. But to come back on the European treaties issue, that's yet another issue where there's disappointment. Why? Because, as you remember, François Hollande had promised in his campaign a renegotiation of the Stability Treaty, the Austerity Treaty, and that wasn't renegotiated. And as you know, the MPs from the Front de Gauche and Jérôme Guedj and other sectors of the Greens and the Socialists voted against that ratification because obviously it forbids the implementation of a left-wing program. So I think that what François Hollande is doing is going nowhere, or at least is going to disaster. If you look at what happened in Greece,
you are exaggerating.
I think something new in Europe is probably that if and when Social Democrats fail, as in Greece, for instance, you don't mechanically have a shift to the right or to the extreme right. That's the formal and traditional alternative. But what's happening, if you look at Greece, for instance, you have Syriza, which is a former other left coalition that is going up and up to 30% in the elections, and I hope and I think it will be able to win elections in the future. And it's sort of maybe what will happen, and I sure hope so. Maybe what will happen is something like what happened in Latin America, where the Social Democrats failed. Well, something to the left emerged, and based on popular mobilizations,
threat to the Socialist Party, obviously. If you basically, she's saying you're betraying the ideals of the left, the hopes of the people, so you will lose.
We have a disagreement with Raquel because I am convinced that there is no two lefts. that are impossibly that are not capable to work together. We have to keep in touch, and by voting against the budget, for instance, the social security budget. I worked a lot on the social security budget. I don't understand.
But you voted against the ratification of the treaty.
Yeah, no, don't. You know, the budget is a part of the majority. You know, the treaty. It's a kind of, you know, it's over-determining my political face. But the budget, when the Communist Party, the Parti de Gauche, says this budget that increase hospital subsidies, that helps...
Not enough.
Yes, but so not enough. That's the word. It's never not enough. So what to do when you say we have to make compromise? Politics is compromise. If you
it's also about deciding where your limits are.
If you are betting on the defeat of François Hollande, it's very, very risky, and you are not. Your bet is that you will be the winner of the failure of François Hollande.
No, I just think that with what you represent, for instance, the left of the Socialist Party, with what the Greens represent, with that common analysis on the consequences, for instance, of the European treaties, there is a left in France that can govern.
So
that's the only thing we're saying. It's not just Hollande or nothing. Hollande represents the right wing of this left.
Let's get all the left together to make this government succeed.
Well, for now, Hollande is the right wing of the Socialist Party, and for now they're doing exactly what they want, because
so you prefer an alternative which is a conservative alternative?
No, but listen, that's the same thing, the argument that was said to those who voted against the treaty. It's always that same argument. It doesn't work anymore.
We have to end it here. Obviously, there are discussions within the left, clearly, about where François Hollande is heading. We'll probably have other occasions to discuss this. Thank you very much for watching Politics. See you next week.